The desert wind howled across the barbed wire fences, carrying with it the sound of crying children and the faint rattle of tin barracks. It was 1942, a year after Pearl Harbor, and in the heart of the American desert. Thousands of families found themselves trapped behind fences they had never imagined could exist in their own country. These were not prisoners of war. They were American citizens. Japanese Americans whose only crime was their ancestry. When Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in December 1941, fear swept across the nation like wildfire. Politicians called for action, newspapers stirred paranoia, and neighbors began to look at each other with suspicion. The government's answer came swiftly and brutally. On February 19, 1942, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, authorizing the forced removal of anyone of Japanese descent from the West Coast. Within weeks, soldiers arrived in quiet towns and cities in California, Oregon, and Washington, carrying orders, rifles, and lists of names. Families were given mere days to pack what they could carry. Take only what you need, they were told. But how do you choose between your photo albums and your family heirlooms? Between your child's toy and your wedding kimono? They left homes they had built for decades, farms they had cultivated, and shops they had run with pride. Pets were left behind, houses were boarded up, and businesses, many of them thriving, were sold for pennies or lost entirely. For most, they would never return. Trains and buses carried them inland. Deep into the desolate heart of America, 2 camps hastily built in places like Manzanar, Heart Mountain, Tule Lake, and Poston. Surrounded by guards and barbed wire, each camp became a small city of despair. Families lived in one-room barracks made of tar paper and wood, their walls thin against the cold winds and blistering heat. Dust seeped through every crack, covering faces, bedding, and food. Privacy was a memory. Toilets were shared and showers were communal. Children played near the fences while soldiers watched from towers above. Inside, parents tried to hold on to some semblance of normal life. Schools were set up, churches were built, and baseball games were played in the dirt. Some even volunteered to serve in the U.S. Army, hoping their loyalty might prove their worth. But even as their sons fought and died for America and Europe, their families remained imprisoned at home. For 2.5 years, these American citizens lived like captives. Their mail was censored, their movements restricted, and their dignity stripped away. They were told it was for their protection, but everyone knew the truth. They were there because of fear and prejudice. In Manzanar, a woman named Aiko Herzegoshinaga remembered the day her family was taken. I was 15. We had to wear tags, like luggage. I thought, this is America, this can't be happening here. Her words echoed the confusion and heartbreak of thousands, who could not understand how the land of freedom had turned against them. Not everyone accepted their fate quietly. At Tule Lake, protests broke out. Young men refused to sign loyalty oaths that demanded they renounce their Japanese heritage. Some were beaten, others imprisoned in solitary confinement. Newspapers called them traitors, but history would later call them brave. When the camps finally closed in 1945 after Japan's surrender, the prisoners were released with nothing. Their homes were gone, their savings depleted, their trust in America shattered. They were told to move on, but where could they go? Towns that once welcomed them now saw them as outsiders. Jobs were scarce, racism rampant. It took decades for the U.S. government to admit what had been done. In 1988, President Ronald Reagan formally apologized, calling it a grave injustice. Survivors were given reparations, a check, and a letter. But for many, the wounds could never heal. As one survivor said, "You can't put a price on lost years." The story of the Japanese-American internment camps is not just a tragedy of war. It is a mirror, one that reflects how fear can erase reason and how prejudice can silence justice. It reminds us that freedom is fragile, that even in a democracy, the line between safety and cruelty can blur when driven by fear. Today, remnants of those camps still stand, empty barracks under a vast, open sky. Visitors walk through them quietly, the desert wind whispering stories of the people who once lived there, citizens behind barbed wire, who held on to their dignity even when their country took everything else. They sang songs to drown out the guards' footsteps, planted gardens in the sand, They taught their children to believe in America, even as America betrayed them. And in that, they found their greatest act of defiance, to still believe in the ideals that had been denied to them. Because in the end, their story isn't just about imprisonment. It's about endurance and the hope that no nation, no matter how powerful, should ever forget that freedom. It's never easily restored.